and welcome to our ongoing series on COVID. A major concern during COVID are the rising sugar levels. What to do, what not to do, what precautions to take, and when should alarm bells ring. In this edition of HT's talk show, The Interview, we have with us Dr. Anup Mishra, well known diabetologist, to address some of these concerns. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mishra, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Mishra, there are lots of concerns of diabetic patients vis-a-vis COVID. So, my first question to you is, are diabetic patients at a higher risk of getting COVID?
That's a very interesting question. The diabetic patients, as a matter of rule, they are more prone to infection. As usual, infections are pneumonia, urinary tract infections, skin infections. But surprisingly, and that's something which surprises me also till now, that they are not prone to COVID infection. And there is no study till now which has proven that diabetic patients will get more COVID infection than a non-diabetic one.
What are the adverse effects of COVID on a diabetic patient?
Now that is a different ballgame altogether. Once a person with diabetes gets a COVID infection, COVID actually runs amok in the body, especially when the diabetes is totally uncontrolled. So they have more. So in layman's terms, one can say more fire in the body, more inflammation. It is called storm. So inflammatory storm becomes more in patients with diabetes. They have various markers which we can assess in the blood. They are raised, and through which we know that the COVID-19 is really bad in this. So that cytokine storm is more in patients with diabetes. They have more of pneumonia. Now, moreover, after that, the patients with diabetes are already have little compromised kidney function. They have compromised cardiac functions also. Now, both are also targeted by COVID-19. So, lungs, kidney, heart, all will be adversely affected, especially when they have a high sugar. And as a result, they are more likely to be shifted to intensive care unit, and they are more likely to receive ventilatory support. So overall, the prognosis of patients with diabetes, especially badly controlled diabetes, is not good in COVID-19.
So, lungs, kidneys, all these are affected, so there is very little left.
Very little left. In fact, yes, that's true. And if sometimes we see the blood reports of these patients, and we are surprised that not a single report actually is within the normal range. All are abnormal, and sometimes very difficult to manage these patients because then they will require huge lot of drugs, IV fluid, besides oxygen, multiple other therapies, blood pressure needs to be maintained, and so on. So it's very difficult at some point of time to manage this, and to manage them itself is the art actually.
So, what is then the way out?
Everybody above 30 years should have their blood glucose estimated, because even if it is slightly high, they are at risk if they contract corona. That anybody who has diabetes should actually get their diabetes controlled very well. Now, whether they do it themselves using a diet and exercise regimen and a proper medication, or ask their doctors for help, uh, because if it's a well-controlled diabetes, chances of getting all these complications are much less than anybody who has an uncontrolled diabetes.
What about those who have a slightly higher level of sugar?
People who have pre-diabetes. Now, already some people have pre-diabetes. They will, if they get COVID, they will rapidly convert to diabetes because of stress and maybe some medication like a steroid. And some, they do not know that they have pre-diabetes. And they first, when they are admitted, their sugar is tested, then they find that there is a pre-diabetes. So that's why I said blood glucose should be estimated in every person with or without COVID-19 at this time to assess whether they have even slightly elevated sugar, and even if it's slightly elevated, that needs to be controlled. The second thing is that people who have COVID often are given steroid. Now they are more often given in India. You know, every physician will give a steroid with a mild COVID, uh, and these steroids are immediately they will start affecting the sugar, and sugar starts rising within a day or two, and sometimes so much that it's very difficult to control. So those who are getting steroids as a treatment for COVID-19 must also get their sugar tested, even if they are not diabetic, because they may become diabetic or they may become pre-diabetic.
Now, a diabetic patient who does not have COVID, fortunately, how often should he or she get their sugars tested? Should it be on a daily basis? Should it be once a month? How frequent should that be?
It all will depend on the type of diabetes this patient has, how many years have gone by with diabetes, and how many drugs or insulin that they are taking. For example, let me give you two quick examples. Uh, a person who's diagnosed to be diabetic for 1 year and he's on one medication and he's pretty good as far as his diet and exercise is concerned, then he need not check his sugars very frequently, maybe once a month, as you said, and every 3 months, hemoglobin A1C estimation, which gives the average sugar of 3 months. But a 20-year-old, 20-year duration of diabetes in a person who's on four drugs and one insulin, and his sugar goes up and down because of the long duration of diabetes and because of so many drugs and insulin, must do his blood sugar testing more frequently. Maybe sometimes we advocate once a day, and maybe twice a day also.
Are there any anti diabetic drugs which can help a COVID patient?
Very interesting question, because uh, there are some diabetic drugs which should be given till patient is actually in the hospital and maybe on ventilator. Then, of course, only insulin will help. But before that, the patient is at home, has a mild COVID. The best drug still is the age-old drug called metformin, which is well known to most of the patients with diabetes because most of them are receiving it. You should not stop metformin because this has some effect against COVID-19. The second drug is a second generation drug called sitagliptin, uh, often and commonly sold as Zanuvia. Sitagliptin also has been shown to have anti-COVID effect.
My next question may appear to be a bit naive, but I will still ask, can a COVID infection cause diabetes?
That's a million-dollar question because there's a lot of research which has gone on into this, and we have written a lot in medical journals about it. Uh, there are a couple of ways by which COVID can cause diabetes. These two epidemics are going simultaneously, especially in India. Diabetes and COVID, and both are bidirectional. Diabetes will increase COVID chances of COVID complications, and COVID will increase chances of diabetes. Number one, the COVID causes stress on the system. Once system is under stress, the first thing the system does is to increase blood sugar production. So sugar goes high. That is number one. The second thing is what I was talking to you, cytokine storm. Storm of lot of chemicals in the body which actually light the fire. And once there is a fire in the body, again, it is a major, huge stress and will cause blood sugar to increase. Third thing is the steroid. Now, sometimes very, very high doses of steroids are used. We have been using every day, every day. And there's a panic call from patients the moment they start steroid. The sugar has gone beyond 300, 400, sometimes 500. Sometimes the glucometer cannot even estimate that. It says high only. That becomes a major problem because steroids have to be given. There is no question about it. The steroids are lifesaver in this situation. Some people have very high sugar immediately after COVID-19 and they go into a condition what is called as ketoacidosis when acid is forming in the blood, which is very, very high degree of diabetes. And patients sometimes go into comatose state because of this itself. So this has been reported from India and worldwide also. So these are a couple of mechanisms we are still learning. Actually, we have not reached anywhere as far as knowledge about this is concerned. This aspect is concerned. We are still learning about it.
What precautions should a diabetic patient take if he gets COVID and is in home isolation?
Masking has to be double. So you isolate yourself, wear a double mask, have your all medicines in one room where you are isolated, take meals at right time, meal discipline, medicine discipline, and measure your sugar as almost every day, at least 2 times. If you have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea more than usual, if feeling markedly uncomfortable, oxygen saturation goes down, certainly you will need hospitalization more than any other person. I always tell my diabetic patient that you should have low threshold for this, and if you get hospital bed, I think you should be hospitalized for a couple of days, even if you don't need oxygen beyond a short while, you'll be fine. Otherwise, maybe, but in many cases, rapid deterioration has been seen, and in such cases, in a hospital setting, the best care can be given.
Dr. Misra, actually, what you say is an ideal situation, but today beds are not available, hospitals are not available, oxygen is not available, and a diabetic patient is at a high risk. Would you recommend a kind of a ICU facility at home, which I hear a lot of people, of course, not diabetic, but also non diabetic, are setting up? What would you say? And when beds and oxygen are not available outside, what can be done in a crisis situation for a diabetic patient?
Yeah, difficult to say. Even that is alternative which we can use. But look, I have a friend whose only profession is setting up ICU at home, and I recently contacted him. He says I can't do anything. I don't have any personnel. I don't have any equipment. All have gone. So even that is something which is untenable at this point of time. But if it can be obtained, then yes, that is a alternative. That you have oxygen at home, you have concentrator high. It has to be a big concentrator, not a small concentrator, or a cylinder. Have oxygen. Somebody to inject steroid because injectable steroids will be needed at this point of time. But even at this point of time, up to this point of time, we can manage. Beyond this, if patient deteriorates further and remdesivir or other uh, drugs are required or ventilation is required, you cannot do it at home. It has to be hospital. So here in the intermediate stage, still you are taking a chance. But you rightly said, in the current position in India or in Delhi, the things are so bad that there is no bed available. Then you may like to manage like this for a while, hold on for a while.
You know, you spoke about tracking blood sugars. What about tracking blood pressure? A diabetic patient who does not have COVID, does he need to track his blood pressure regularly?
Absolutely. If patient is already known to have blood pressure earlier and is on blood pressure drugs, certainly he needs to check blood pressure. But if he is not known to be hypertensive and overall he's doing well, then he may check his blood pressure less frequently, maybe once or twice. But those who are on blood pressure drugs, at least once a day, blood pressure needs to be checked.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but don't diabetes and hypertension go hand in hand?
Mostly, ma'am. It is something like this that sometimes diabetes comes first and sometimes blood pressure comes first, but mostly after a while, both are together. Mostly. There are going to be very few patients of diabetes where blood pressure drugs are not going on, or if you look at the other way, that long-standing blood pressure, most of them will be diabetic. So yes, they are a buddy.
So, which means that a diabetic who has blood pressure, which normally is the case, and does not have COVID and does have COVID, what is the regimen he or she must follow vis-a-vis testing, whether it's blood sugars or blood pressure? How often and how do you sort of go about that?
Once such a patient develops COVID-19, immediately, every day, at least twice a day, blood sugar needs to be tested, and once a day, blood pressure needs to be tested. If patient is on multiple drugs and insulin, more than 2 times a day, blood sugar needs to be tested. Sometimes in the night also, after dinner, and 3 o'clock also in the night. And patients who are on steroid therapy, 4 times a day, or maybe 5 times a day, blood sugar needs to be tested.
Coming to vaccines, should diabetic patients take any precautions before a vaccine is administered?
The precautions are universal for vaccine, and it is not specific for any diabetic patient. The other thing which has come up in this particular last 2 3 months is that those who have had history of some clots earlier, clots anywhere, especially brain or even some other vein, then they have to be careful because especially with Covishield vaccine, where the clots have been said to be one of the side effects. Apart from that, I think all diabetics can receive vaccine, any of the vaccines.
You spoke about blood clotting. Should blood thinners then be stopped in those diabetic patients who are taking them?
Not at all. Not at all.
Or
In fact,
reduced? Or
no,
reduced?
nothing. No change in doses is required of any blood thinner except one type of blood thinner, which is oral anticoagulant. Coumarin are the usual. These are very given in very few people who have diabetes with some heart disease, valvular heart disease, or some irregularity of the heart. In those patients, uh, something can occur. If a vaccination is given here and then not properly pressed, for example, here it is given and it's not pressed for at least 2 minutes, then a bleeding can occur here. That is the only side effect as far as that anticoagulant is concerned. Otherwise, most 99% of the people are taking aspirin or dual antiplatelet with clopidogrel. In such cases, there is no change of any doses required. In fact, these are the ones which may protect against clot development.
In case there are adverse effects on a diabetic patient, would those be more severe after the vaccine?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. Actually, we don't know much about it. But I'll tell you a couple of experiences that we have had. Um, uh, in couple of patients, we saw increase in blood pressure. Now that could be due to the anxiety itself, because there was a huge amount of anxiety initially that if I take vaccine, something will happen to me. But the other interesting thing, which I must tell you, which we have yesterday itself reported in a journal, is that in 3 patients after vaccination, the blood sugar went up. Now, what vaccine does is once it is given here, then it produces a local inflammation here. It's a small amount of inflammation. Any inflammation in a diabetic patient with long-standing diabetic, they are sensitive to any kind of, for example, if they get hurt, their sugar goes up. they get stressed, the sugar goes up. This also is given, sugar goes up. So we have reported 3 cases for the first time in the world that the sugar went up after vaccination. But fortunately, this is all transient because this inflammation is not going to stay for a long time. This is going to be transient. So 7, 10 days, sugar came down by itself without increasing the dose of any drug. So we are still learning about vaccines. We are still learning about side effects of vaccines. I'm sure in the future we may, especially in diabetic patients, we will know more.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one theory which is gaining ground, I think, is that diabetic patients maybe require a third dose of vaccine.
Uh, this is a very, very interesting thing that uh, actually has been seen in other conditions. Now, you've already interviewed oncology expert, cancer expert. He also talked about immunosuppressive drugs, means their immunity of those patients are very low. In such patients, it has been seen where immunosuppressive drugs have been given, maybe a cancer patient, maybe a transplant patient, very few convert to active antibody state. So, for example, let's say I get a vaccination, I have an antibody starting 2 to 3 weeks from now. A person with transplant with on a high immunosuppressive regimen, he gets the vaccine. He has less than 1/5 of the chances that I have of getting the antibody. So, if we translate all this to diabetic patients, I would say long-standing uncontrolled diabetes is something akin to a immunosuppressive. So their immunity is down. And maybe in these people, the antibody generation is not as good or may not as last as much as any other person. If that is so, it will certainly needs to be more research. And if it is on the lower side after 4 months, 6 months, antibody is going like this down, then they will certainly require a third dose of vaccination. But actually, third dose is being already considered for everybody.
Yes, a third dose, of course, if it's universally accepted, yes. But a diabetic would not rush to get a third dose or should not get one unless it is advisable or advised by the doctor. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Right now, there is no third dose. Right now, there is no. What we are talking about is in the future, and what we are talking about will need a lot of research data before we actually advise it.
As a diabetologist, do you have any advice for diabetic patients to increase their immunity and, if possible, avoid infections? I'm not saying
That's
avoid COVID because I don't think that's possible, so I'm using the word infections.
right. Yeah, that's something which is, you know, very common sense. Actually, it is common sense, but not followed by most of the people. Now, number one, as far as increasing immunity is concerned, is actually exercise, aerobic exercise. The moment you start aerobic exercise, for example, let's say treadmill at 6 kilometers per hour, your the cells which increase immunity, they start increasing in number and start throwing out more antibodies, more other substances which can protect you. But all this is transient. So if you say one bout of exercise can protect you for 6 months, no, it has to be regular exercise. And number two is diet. There is no question that a good diet will increase immunity. Now, what we lack as Indians, what we lack in our food is the protein. And most of us are vegetarian, so our protein is not as good in quality as the meat is. Meat is the best quality protein. So what do? Then we take a lot of vegetarian protein, which includes a lot of dals, rajma, soya bean, paneer, curd, Nutri-Nugget, all this will have good amount of protein. So the proteins are important. Why they are important? Because the cells which fight infection are made of protein. The immunoglobulin or immunity, so-called, we say immunity in general. These are immunoglobulins which are circulating in the blood to fight infections are all protein. So in a nutshell, if you do your daily exercise, if you take a lot of protein, if you take a good amount of green leafy vegetables and fruit, and you take, if you can, some flax seeds, some other seeds, nuts, and seeds, you will have a fairly good amount of immunity, as good as can be, without even taking any supplement. But if you want to take, you can take zinc, multivitamin, or vitamin C.
I was just coming to the vitamin bit. You know, the latest what we hear, pop in vitamin C, pop in Zincovet. Does that work? Does that help?
Now, there are a couple of experimental studies which show that if we increase zinc in the blood, then it actually acts against coronavirus. So that there are a couple of experimental study, but mind you, experimental data is never final, and unless we see these data in real world, giving zinc and then to one number of patients and other arm we don't give zinc and see whether they get coronavirus. That is the type of study that we need, which is not yet there. But there is one vitamin where such type of study has been done, which is vitamin D, which I omitted from that discussion. Vitamin D has been given to one group of patients and not given to other group of patients. Those who received vitamin D actually got less of coronavirus. In such situation, vitamin D is probably number one, zinc is possibly number two. Vitamin C you can get from fruits also, and vitamin C has long history, checkered history, controversial history of preventing infections.
So, in the absence of reliable data, would you advise your patients who are diabetics to take vitamin C and zinc on a regular basis in addition to their medication which they take for diabetes?
It depends on their profile. For example, a particular patient has a very bad profile with the food. Takes junk food, takes a lot of alcohol, not following any exercise. Here, this patient is likely to be deficient in many vitamins also, and likely to be low in immunity. In such patient, I insist that you should take multivitamin also, B12 also, vitamin D also, and maybe zinc also. But if a person is, say, 35-year-old, he's a good, well-controlled diabetes, he's following all my advice as far as diet is concerned, takes good amount of fruits, vegetables, everything will be available if he takes a good balanced diet. In such cases, I do not insist, neither do I tell him that you should take zinc or vitamin.
So, what you're saying is, and as I understand it, that vitamin C and Zincovet should be taken on a case to case basis, and it's not as if one size fits all.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is more now has become uh, something. If I don't give to the patient, patient say, "Oh, your prescription is incomplete. You're not giving zinc and vitamin C." So I try to tell them, but most of them are not convinced. You see, they want vitamins, every all, not only for themselves. Once I write it for them, they want for the whole family, for friends and everybody. So it's difficult to control that kind of mindset, and especially when these are available over the counter, they don't need any prescription. So you will see that even if doctor doesn't prescribe, they are taking anyway.
I'm a bit surprised, Dr. Misra, when you said that Indians are low on protein because they actually live on dal and roti, and dal has a lot of protein. That's one part. The second, what is your take on this latest fad of gluten free diet?
If you see vegetarian proteins, their biological value is very low. Means if we take same amount of meat and same amount of dal, then the absorption and building up of muscles from each one of them is different. So meat will lead to more muscle building, more protein in the blood, and dal will not. So biological value is markedly low. Because of this, generally, our protein albumin in the blood is lower than the Western population, and also our muscles power and efficiency is also low. So that's as far as protein is concerned. Now, as far as gluten is concerned, gluten-free diet, which is another thing which is going around, and every day I face queries from my patients that, doc, I have started gluten-free diet. So my answer is, unless you are gluten sensitive, as per the antibody level blood marker of gluten sensitivity, or taking gluten actually produces a whole lot of abdominal upset, there is no use of gluten-free diet. I have never used it in any patient, and I feel, and other people, it's not my thinking alone, but there are experts in the world who have written about gluten-free diet. They also feel that it may not do so good as believed, and sometimes it can do harm. For example, if you take gluten, then it has a good amount of protein as well as fiber. Now, fiber is excellent for heart, and the if you see the reviews of gluten-free diet, they will always raise this alarm that if you decrease fiber, maybe ultimately gluten-free diet will actually increase the risk of heart disease. So yes, if those who have transglutaminase levels which are high, signifying that gluten can cause allergy in their stomach, or some people where gluten taking gluten will increase abdominal upset, even when they are antibody negative, such people are going to be 2% to 3%. That's all. Rest of the people, there is no reason that they should be on gluten-free diet.
Which means if you have allergy to wheat or if you have a celiac disease, you should go off gluten. Healthy, normal people do not need to go off gluten.
Absolutely, I 100% say about this, and I have in my clinical practice and my patient's profile, I have never gone wrong sticking to this particular principle.
Is there any basis that a post COVID patient who's a diabetic goes from oral medicine to insulin?
Most of the patients who require insulin because of high blood sugar during COVID time, most of the patient, 90% of the patient, uh, may not require insulin after 4 to 6 weeks. Once they stabilize, they are out of the hospital, they're off, the steroids have been stopped, they are doing some sort of exercise at home, they are into home food, then they most often will not require. But some people may have deteriorating situation, especially maybe the COVID has hit their insulin producing cells. Maybe the steroid has put their metabolism in a major jeopardy. In such cases, insulin may be required subsequently also. We are still learning about this because after all, it's been 1 year and we have some experience about it. But most of the patient will stop insulin. Some may continue to require insulin for some time.
And finally, Dr. Misra, what is post COVID management for a diabetic patient? What to do, what not to do?
What is happening during the COVID infection, and especially patient is hospitalized for 10 days or 15 days, and if especially patient is on ventilator, then there is what is called as acute sarcopenia. What is acute sarcopenia? Is that major dissolution of the muscles in the bone during this time. So patient loses weight, patient loses muscle, patient loses bones also, apart from general disturbances of his metabolism. So after he comes back from the hospital uh, at home, there's problem in the walking, more problem in the physical activity, and patient feels extremely weak. So some people who lost weight and lost muscle feel extremely weak, and some people who have not lost weight feel extremely weak. So this so-called long COVID, post-COVID syndromes are emerging, and we have yet to understand them fully. But most of them are being managed with common sense and with good rehabilitative diet and exercise and some amount of psychotherapy from the physician himself. 99% of the time it works.
Dr. Mishra, is there something you would like to tell diabetic patients who either have COVID or who are recovering from COVID or who have recovered from COVID? Some areas which I may have left out by default.
One, I would tell all my diabetic patients to control their diabetes very well during this time. Do not have, this is the emphasis from me and all physicians is more on this now than ever. So, so that you don't get COVID, number one. Once you get COVID, depending on the severity, you will take maybe longer time to recover, during which there is going to be destabilization of your blood sugar, there may be fluctuations of your blood pressure, there may be fluctuations of your kidney functions also. Do not panic, hold on, have good attitude towards in the rehabilitation, and like I said, 99% of the time, with proper diet, exercise, good control of your sugar, you will recover. When will you recover will depend on person to person. Most of the people will recover fully in 3 months if they have 10 to 15 days of hospitalization. But somebody who has been on ventilator for 1 month or long hospitalization may take up to 6 months of time. But you will recover, you will regain all your organ functions, you will regain all your strength, and that is something to look forward to.
Dr. Mishra, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for answering all the questions. This has been indeed a very informative session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.